In 610 CE, the Arabian Peninsula was a fragmented, waterless desert caught directly between the crushing, militarized borders of the Roman and Persian empires. Internally, the region was suffering from severe societal decay, an era known as Jahiliyyah. A wealthy oligarchy aggressively hoarded resources, and high-interest usury trapped the poor in endless debt. Moral degradation was a celebrated cultural norm. Muhammad occupied a highly unique position in this society, known universally as al-Amin, which translates to the trustworthy. He held a respected noble lineage that gave him the exact social capital needed to lead a massive populace uprising. All the conditions were perfectly aligned. With a fractured society and an oppressed underclass, and with a charismatic, trusted leader, the environment was primed for a conventional revolution to swiftly seize absolute power over Arabia. Yet, the path he actually chose guaranteed 13 years of extreme physical suffering, public torture for his followers, and a total absence of political power. Why would the founder of Islam deliberately ignore highly effective, guaranteed political shortcuts in favor of the hardest possible route? The Makkan elite immediately responded to his specific, non-political approach with extreme violence. They recognized his methodology as a direct, existential threat to their grip on the city. This rejection of easy influence prioritized a specific sequence of growth, focusing on internal conviction before establishing any formal political structures. This diagram illustrates the first highly viable shortcut, Arab nationalism. The warring tribal factions could have easily been organized into a unified bloc to violently overthrow the suffocating Roman and Persian imperial borders. That strategy was rejected because the goal required completely eradicating human subjugation. Trading Roman or Persian tyranny for a local Arab equivalent would still leave humans oppressed by other humans. The second option was an economic revolution. Given the massive wealth disparity in Mecca, one could easily weaponize the anger of the starving majority, inciting them to overthrow the wealthy minority and forcefully redistribute the city's resources. This approach was also discarded. When social justice is implemented entirely by the threat of the sword, it inevitably breeds greed on one side and envy on the other. That system requires constant state violence to maintain the new order. Conventional political and economic revolutions ultimately fall short because they merely shift the levers of power between different human factions without curing the root disease of human tyranny itself. A third potential shortcut was moral reform. This strategy involves gathering the straight-laced individuals of Makkah into an exclusive group to strictly clean up society's severe vices, like heavy drinking and gambling. But moral codes built without a foundational belief in an ultimate higher authority are entirely unstable. Without a supreme judge, those rules instantly collapse the moment heavy societal pressure is applied. Instead, the movement narrowed its entire ideological struggle down to one strict, unyielding concept, Tawhid. This is the absolute sovereignty of God, encapsulated in the phrase La ilaha illallah, meaning there is no deity worthy of worship except God. To the 7th century Arabs, this phrase acted as a direct anti-establishment declaration of war. It completely stripped all legislative and moral sovereignty away from the local tribal leaders and wealthy oligarchs. In fact, for the entire 13 years the Muslims remained in Mecca, not a single state law, economic regulation, or penal code was revealed. The Makkan period functioned as an ideological training ground, where the focus remained on identifying the source of authority rather than the specifics of legislation. Fast forward to the Medinan phase. This diagram shows a massive tree growing a dense root network entirely in the dark, before a thick trunk breaches the surface. Because of this unshakable foundation, society was prepared to receive actual legal and economic systems, the Sharia. The historical outcome of this specific sequencing is striking. When strict societal laws, like the absolute ban on alcohol and usury, were finally introduced, no police force or state coercion was required to enforce them. The population spontaneously smashed their own wine jars in the streets, out of pure submission to the authority they had already accepted internally. External legal frameworks are only instantly and permanently adopted when internal submission to a higher authority has already been fully secured. This historical contrast reveals a specific pattern in modern social and political reform movements. Today, reform is often approached as a matter of research and constitutional drafting. Efforts are spent debating the details of new laws for populations that have not yet agreed upon the fundamental source of authority those laws are derived from. Without the invisible work of ideological training, these top-down systems rely on state coercion, police power, and propaganda to maintain order. The result is a fragile structure where the law is followed only when authorities are watching. A lasting system follows an organic growth pattern. Outward laws of a society are simply the final manifestation of an internal, individual transformation.